Welcome to Performance Dynamics, the podcast where we dive deep into the intricate factors that drive success in sports and business. Join your hosts, Gareth Ewing and Joe Mountford, as we explore the mental strengths, mindset skills, and psychological dynamics that can elevate performance. In each episode, we'll interview leading professionals from various fields, drawing from their insights and experiences to uncover what truly helps and hinders success. In this episode of Staying the Course, we build on our conversation from episode 1 about the intense buildup and pressures leading up to a major event like the World Cup, the Olympics, or significant business milestones. Join us as we delve into the unique challenges of performing on the world stage, where the excitement of being surrounded by childhood role models and stars can quickly become a distraction. We discuss strategies to maintain focus and motivation amidst the pressures of high expectations and the awe-inspiring atmosphere. How can you stay on task when your dreams are within reach, but the allure of fame and recognition threatens to sidetrack you? Tune in as we explore practical tips and mindset shifts to ensure you remain committed to your goals, even as you share the spotlight with those you've always admired. After all, this is what you've been working for so hard over the past 4 years. Please support the podcast by subscribing and sharing with friends and family. It would be great if you can leave a 5-star review. Join our community so together we can support and improve each other's lives. Welcome back, Gareth, and it's so lovely to chat to you again.
I wanted to chat about, as you know, we watched the Olympic opening ceremony, which is incredible for us as spectators, and all the athletes look so happy, and it all looks incredible, and I'm sure it is. But I would also imagine, talking about performance anxiety, how overwhelming it could be when you notice people that are better than you or have got more medals or etc., just, you know, who you've never met before, and it may have been your role model, whatever the case may be, how that might distract you or take you off course. And yeah.
I think it's it's something that happens at these big global events, even if it's a World Cup, because you end up being, if you're not in the same, you're in the same village, but you might be in the same hotel if it's a different event, and you see them every day. You see them at breakfast, and what can happen is you start to compare, and you start to idolize, and you start to wonder what they're up to. And of course, there's obviously all these other sensory distractions. You've got unlimited food. You've got this huge village that you're suddenly in if it's a multi-sport event. And when you should be resting, you're out walking and exploring, and suddenly you've put 20,000 steps onto your legs. And, you know, the cumulative effect of that can be very damaging. So it's about the discipline around that stuff, and how do you appreciate and enjoy an experience without it taking over? Because at the end of the day, you're there for a very short window of competition. And I agree, like this, you know, you see these athletes, you know who they are, you might have looked up to them, you might be competing against them tomorrow. And, you know, how do you dance around each other? And it's a really interesting situation to find yourself in.
And the other distraction would be social media. It's such an exciting moment, and all these people, and then you wanting to post, etc. So what I'm saying is your mindset is distracted. And I think where you used the word there, discipline. And one of the athletes that I work with, she had time limits for her phone, so she wouldn't be on her phone for certain times, which was very good. And she declined interviews. So she didn't want to be distracted by interviews and things like that, which that's her own decision at the end of the day. But I think those are things that you need to prepare for before these events, that you can't prepare for everything. But things like, if it's the aquatic center, if it's being able to visualize these things before you get there, so that you minimize the distractions and the surprises and the overwhelm to the best of your abilities. But having some structures in place, like phone time, and playlists that'll help you stay calm, and routines and safe people that you can communicate with who don't trigger your anxiety, and having all those things in place so that you can stay on task.
Yeah, I like that a lot, Joe. And for me, it's about what boundaries are you putting in place. So we're still going back 6-7 weeks at least, into our preparation before we've got there. What are we allowing? What are we not allowing? If you want to cut out a media interview, perfect. If it's part of your obligation, and I do believe that athletes have an obligation to speak to their public, then when will you allow yourself to go for those interviews, and then will you shut yourself out from it? What is your social media like? The idea of phone time. We know that phones and digital devices by and large are poisonous for performance, and knowing how much we can tolerate and when it stops becoming a tool and starts becoming something else. So yeah, and then again, it's in the village. It's what do you do? It's at the event. How closely can you replicate when you go to training? Are you going to walk through the same gates? Are you going to catch the bus at the appropriate times? Are you going to get used to these things so that as little of it as possible is a surprise? When you go to an event and you're practicing, actually, they're usually still setting up. They're practicing the AV stuff. They're practicing their routines, their schedules as well, the organizers. So you're actually part of the process for them too sometimes, and giving yourself that, again, what can you control? What are you just soaking in terms of experience, and knowing that you're going to make mistakes as well.
Yeah.
And making the mistakes early, not once competition starts.
And letting it go as quickly as you can. So let's wrap it up there, Gareth, for our first episode. And we will be talking about performance and post-performance. And we look forward to you tuning in for our second episode. So welcome back. And this is our episode 2 of performing at big events like the Olympics. In our previous episode, we discussed the preparation time, the building up to a big event, and some of the challenges that you might face. And then we also spoke about some of the things that could help you in order to prepare. So in this episode, we are going to discuss during competition, some of the things that could become overwhelming during competition, the pressures that one might face during competition, like increased visibility. So for some first timers, it'll be the first time they're on the world stage, and that could be overwhelming, and it could distract them, and it also could be setting themselves up for scrutiny, individuals and teams, where suddenly there's a whole lot of feedback that might not feel so good. What do you think? What do you think about that, Gareth?
Yeah, it's interesting, Joe, because it doesn't matter how much you prepare, and you can lay down so many routines, and you can lay so many rituals, and you can get your what ifs and your plans A, B, C, D, E, and rehearsed and go through your scenarios like we spoke about last time, is that still is nothing quite the same as game day. And the only thing that helps you with that is doing it over and over and over again. So it's that building up of experience. It's understanding that there are certain things you're on top of, there's certain things you can control, but there are other things you'll never be in control of. That's obviously the officials, the weather, the facilities. So yeah, it's an interesting space to get into, and it's also, it's a culmination. It's all the buildup, and now the buildup is about to be expressed, and that in itself can create a little bit of anxiety. The stadium wasn't full the last time you went there for training. It's full now. The DJ's on sync. He's got his stuff going, and the noise and the lights and everything are in place. So it's a little bit shock to the system, and those teams, those athletes who can put that to one side and embrace what's happening between the lines or in the lane, those are the ones that are going to be successful.
Yeah. There are two things there that you brought up that I want to cover. And as you said, you can never reenact the real day, like the game day. You can't practice that. And what was interesting in the US Open, in the men's final with Sinner and Fritz, they were hitting the ball so hard. And the commentators were saying, you can never account for the extra adrenaline in a final. Like, they wouldn't be able to replicate that again. And I don't think they were able to keep it going. But it was just in that first set, the adrenaline just took their hitting to another level. And that's what you need to think about too in any performance is how much is your adrenaline going to help you? And I mean, even proprioception, your body in space, how does that change things? But it's just an awareness. That's what we were talking about previously, is having the awareness of these things.
It is an awareness, Joe, but it's also understanding it can feed performance or it can take away from performance. Yeah. So is that adrenaline, that little bit of understanding, oh shit, I'm in my survival state here. I need to get back into the thinking part of my brain, and use that. So am I responding with that adrenaline towards performance, or am I responding towards overreacting to the umpire or worrying about little things that aren't going to make a fundamental difference? Have I suddenly can't find my playing shirt 2 minutes before the game because I've just lost my sense of self and where I am in a situation. Okay. So that's when
the attention,
those routines become so important.
Yeah. And that's when it's recognizing your attention is diverted. And what is the trigger to bring me back? How do I do that? The other thing that you spoke about is the noise. And we've had this discussion before. It's like, if you think about the rugby that we've just, South Africa and New Zealand, because and in the Olympics, the DJ is pumping that music. The crowd is very noisy. Some people are heightened by that, and that increases their performance drive. Yet others are hindered by that, and it also you struggle to be able to communicate if it's with your players or your coaches, right? With instruction. That's something that, again, you can't really prepare for. Although Erasmus does, he walks around with that speaker. That's the reality, isn't it?
Yeah, and you can prepare for it to a point. You train your non-verbal communication. You train your signaling. You train your repetition and your positioning. I can remember when I worked in the US, the football teams trained with huge speakers around the field all the time. And they just played crowd noise and music the whole time so that people got used to getting their calls across to each other. So yeah, you can train it, but it's still a little bit different. But again, if your conditioning for that noise is there, if your communication in terms of not just verbal are in place, it can make things a little bit easier. I've seen a conditioning coach from India, where they're used to playing in front of these incredibly noisy crowds, doing his communication with a whistle. So blowing a whistle when the players needed to change position or change to the next routine. So you find your tools to get around it. But when you're in the space, it's that sense of overwhelm. It's suddenly like, okay, this is real. And that distraction is what separates those who are successful on day one when they're still getting used to it versus those who are struggling with it. And I hope that, again, it comes with exposure, but I think it's finding the right tools to get yourself into a position where it's not such a distraction and it can actually feed your energy.
Yep. And Gareth, that's the work you and I do. It's helping individuals to develop the awareness, to develop the mindset, to develop the mental strength so that in those big moments, they are not overwhelmed. And if they are overwhelmed, it's recognizing they're overwhelmed and then being able to bring them back into the moment. Let's talk about, so it's game day, and this is the game that you can definitely win, because the other games are going to be a bit more challenging, and then you lose. So there's disappointment and frustration, and it's how quickly are you able to, like, as a coach, how much time would you give them to be just disappointed? Because it's a real emotion and it's appropriate. Like, how much time? Because, like, with me, with my divers, I give them a time frame of how long they can be angry for or disappointed for, and then they need to shift to get back on task and get, back with a strategy. Is that something that, as a coach, you allow them the time, or do you just leave it, or like what would you do?
Yeah, there are I think limits to emotional outbursts and emotional processing, but everybody does need time, and those emotions actually can be processed quite a lot quicker than we all think they can if we notice them and if we're aware of how we are feeling. I think, again, boundaries, like we spoke about last time, there's what's allowed and what isn't allowed, and where and how you can express your emotions. And everybody gets whatever it might be. It's up to the team or up to the individual. Is it 5 minutes? It doesn't need to be 5 hours. Get yourself back together, have a reset, draw a line. I think bookending things, this is the start of the warm-up, this is the end of the debrief. That time frame needs to be quite, clear, so that people know when are they on the clock, when are they off the clock. And part of that, in that, is that here's your 5 minutes after a game to go and pull yourself down, get what you need to out of your system, and then we're going to come back together and we're going to have our debrief and our wrap up. And whether that's at the field, probably a quick short one, or at the venue, and then a slightly longer one afterwards, and that could even be the next day. Just again, is it routine? Is it structure? Is it in place? So that there's an expectation. We all like boundaries. We all like to know what we can and can't do, and then use that as part of our process overall. Again, nothing new, nothing unexpected.
Yeah. So there's clarity. I was talking to an Australian coach who had a swimmer at the Olympics, and he was a 200-meter swimmer. And it was an 800-meter swimmer, and after 400 meters, he knew his race was done. And he held on to that disappointment for the rest of the Olympics. So what he was expected to do in the rest of the races, he didn't achieve, because he held on to the disappointment of his expectations that he had for the 800. And so, again, our job as coaches is allowing them the emotion, which is appropriate, allowing them the time to be disappointed, but then helping them shift quickly, or first letting that go. You've got to let that disappointment go, because it's unhelpful to carry that cart with you into the next game. It has to be buried, put to bed, and then fresh start. Like, nothing new, nothing, as you said, everything has to be the same. But if you can't carry that into your mindset, because that goes into what I can't do and what we did last time, which is unhelpful.
Telling yourself a story about your performance, and attaching something to it, and that's acceptable and it's understandable. But yes, you can't take it with you. And I'm always curious, if you look at, again, in dynamic sports where opportunities come and go, ball sports especially, you miss an opportunity and it's gone, it's never coming back. You miss a shot on goal, you miss a tackle. It's getting up, and it's your next action that counts. It's your next response that counts. If you dwell on what happened 10, 15 seconds ago or 10, 15 minutes ago, then you're going to probably miss the next opportunity that comes along. So that reset, that reframe is important. And I think in the short term, it's reset. And in the longer term, it's reframe. Okay, what did I learn from that opportunity? What will I do next time? And remembering that every opportunity is completely unique. There will be things that happen over and over again, but they will never be 100% identical.
True story. That's true. Gareth, let's talk about maybe social isolation or feelings of, let's call it loneliness. So you've been with if you're a team, you've been with the team building up approximately 6 weeks to a big competition, which means there's a chance you've been away from your family, your loved ones, your routines, your same, your house, your dogs, your cats, your whatever. And now there's the Olympics or World Cup or whatever it is. And you might have had a disappointment, or you might be sitting on the bench, or there might be just a whole lot of things not really going according to the way you wanted to go. And a highly competitive environment where other teams are succeeding and you're not doing so well. It's a real thing, isn't it? Social isolation, where
it's a real thing. Yeah. You know what it is. It's the story you tell yourself before you get there, the plans you put in place before you get there, and then suddenly game one is under the belt, or event one is under the belt. And if you're very fortunate and it goes to plan, and then you have this momentum and you take that forward. Or if it doesn't go to plan, then you feel like you've lost momentum, and now you're picking it up again, and you don't necessarily have that crutch that you may have at home. Not so easy to get hold of whoever you like to speak to at home if there's a 6 or 8 hour time difference. So those things are in place. And also what can happen, and this is why we go back to the themes around social media and how much time do we spend on our devices, is the expectation gets built up before the first interaction, the first competition. And then the second one, or the first one, is out the way, and it didn't go the way that everybody wanted it to. They don't have your context. And if you're not careful about who you engage with, you start to believe their story about you. And that changes the story you tell about yourself. And that can be quite dangerous, because they don't know what preparation you're in. They don't know what your plans are. They don't know what actually went well or what didn't go well. All they see is what they see on TV. And that's not what really happened in the game.
Yeah.
And even your experience of the game is not what really happened, because it's objective for you,
Exactly. So it's keeping to your truth and keeping to your narrative without being derailed by others.
And whose feedback counts? Whose feedback counts?
Yeah.
That you've got to know before the tournament starts, before the event starts. Is it your coach? Is it your teammate? Is it your family? And is it your internal feedback that counts?
I was also thinking about, exactly, your internal feedback. But in a team, there can be a time that you're actually not playing well. For example, say I didn't play well the first game, not playing so well in the second game, but somebody else is like having a lights out tournament, and that could derail you too. Thinking, well, the others are playing so well, and I don't know what's wrong with me. And then it's the negative loop, the negative cycle. So it's like, again, as they say, as us as coaches, it's something that you work with someone to help them get out of that negative loop, because they wouldn't be there if they weren't able. They wouldn't be there if they didn't have the talent. So what is taking them out? What is the thing that is making it not good? And it's often the mind, right? It's the negative self-talk or the negative narrative that is what I can't do rather than what I can do well. And then if you're focusing on somebody else who's having a blinder, you've taken the focus off yourself.
Yeah,
do you think that happens?
Competition is about benchmarking and comparison, but when you're using it to berate yourself, or to talk about your value as a human being or as a teammate, that's when it can become unhealthy. And this goes back again. This is stuff that should be happening long before you get to the event. Is where do people fit in, and understanding, especially in a team sport, everybody's going to do their part, and we're going to have our ups and downs, and that's why we're going to be there to back each other up. If you're in an individual sport, I think that benchmarking against your opponent is often, I think, where it happens, and that's also unhelpful. It's easy for us to say, but it's being deliberate about going, hang on a minute, I need to reframe this. These are the things I can work on. These are the things I need to improve. It doesn't matter how well that person is doing. This is about me. And if I can, the one thing that always strikes me about a multi-sport event is you look at the timed events, race finishes. Let's say, there's eight swimmers, and 6 of them, only 3 can win a medal, but 6 of them have got their PB or a national record, or whatever it might be, it's like their best ever performance, their first final. There are so many different layers of performance, and outsiders will lose track of that. Yes. Insiders will know and understand and respect it. And that's why the insiders can be the ones that are the most important when you are feeling low.
Okay. That's brilliant advice. That is brilliant advice, because it's the small victories that keep you moving forward. And the unhelpful is the outside noise, as you say, because they don't know what your goals are. And talking about goals, let's talk about goals in competition. When you say reframe, are you talking about reframing goals you would have to because of the logs, etc. But it's kind of keeping goals similar and yet reframing them, changing them, just to keep you focused on task moving forward.
Yeah, two elements to the reframing aspect. The first one is reframing the story you're telling yourself about the performance. It's never as bad as you remember, and it's never as good as you remember. And that's why proper debriefing, proper video analysis, proper time with the coach and your teammates is so important, because it puts everything back into perspective. It helps you to package it, put it to one side, and get ready for the next event. And the other thing about the reframing is, like, yes, you have superstar maximum goal. This is where we're going. And in a competition, you may get knocked out, or it may become mathematical that you get to that. It's okay. What will still make our performances worthwhile? What are the small improvements that we're making? What is our new goal? If we can't get gold medal, are we going for bronze now? Are we going for our highest finish? Are we going for a PB? Knowing those things, even again ahead of time. So we spoke last time, plan A, plan B, plan C. Those goals are also going to be set in terms of, where are we? This is now plan B. What does this mean in terms of our final goal? And is a goal even this event, or is it the next event that we're going to layer on top of this performance? So 2 aspects for me to that reframing exercise.
And it's keeping everybody on board, keeping everybody invested, energy high, and contributing. Intentionally.
And you know what, Joe? Competition is a beast. Like, things are in your control, things are outside of your control, and the most important thing that you can control is yourself. How you respond to any given situation, how you want to look back in terms of your values on how you conducted yourself on the day. Did you hit your performance targets? Yes or no? It's only a small part of the whole process. So it's really just an interesting conversation. You could actually, I think, probably talk for days and hours and years. And I'm looking forward to when we can get someone on the show to talk about their own personal experiences in the space. But just over to you to wrap up. And again, thanks for a great chat.
Thank you so much, Gareth. It's so awesome to have your invaluable contribution. And our next episode, so episode 3, we will be discussing post-performance. So what one can go through after the huge build-up of a competition, and then what it's like after competition, going home back to life after the competition. So thank you, Gareth, and thank you to the listeners, and we look forward to our next episode.
Thanks.
You can support our podcast by subscribing and sharing it with friends and family. We would love for you to leave a 5-star rating and review to help us grow our community. Join us in fostering improvement and support for one another's journeys. Don't forget to subscribe to the Beast Crypto YouTube channel as well as our social media channels. So in the transcript, you can connect with both Gareth and myself by clicking on the links below. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to continuing this important conversation in the next episode. The disclaimer is this podcast discusses topics related to mental well-being and personal experiences. The views and opinions expressed by the hosts and guests are personal and may not represent the views of everyone in our community. While we aim to inspire and support, it's essential to remember that individual experiences with mental health in sports can vary significantly. If you or someone you know is facing challenges with mental health, we encourage you to seek professional help. Our discussions aim to inform and educate and should not replace professional advice. We are committed to fostering an open and supportive dialogue. Thank you for joining us on this journey. We hope you find motivation and encouragement in our conversations.